Don't like it. Not happy about it. Because I appreciate her and what she has meant to me, what she has meant to the show, what she has meant to the network, what she's meant to the business.
Stephen A. Smith didn't just react when Molly Qerim stormed out of ESPN. He went straight to the top, confronting the network's owners and demanding they show her the money and the respect she'd earned. What went down behind those closed doors? It wasn't just loyalty. It exposed the dark side of ESPN's power game. This wasn't some quiet exit. It was chaos in designer suits.
Last night, she abruptly resigned as the host of the show. And to say that I'm quite sad about it is an understatement. Molly is a friend. Molly is a coworker. Molly is somebody that I have leaned on many occasions in the past, as she has done when it comes to me. We've been partners on the show for the last 10 years. And a lot of times, some of these things happen, and it's just uncomfortable to see.
Molly Qerim, the face of First Take for almost a decade, didn't fade out gently. She walked out, no confetti, no goodbye speech, nothing. Fans thought it was just another career move, but insiders say Stephen A. Smith, ESPN's biggest moneymaker, was already in boardrooms fighting her corner. The problem? The truth about what really happened behind the scenes is far uglier than anyone's letting on. Stephen A., the man who pulls $20 million a year from ESPN, suddenly started dropping slick comments that sounded a little too close to Molly's situation. He'd say, "I'm not talking about Molly," and then launch into rants about value, leverage, and knowing your worth. Come on, we all knew who he meant. He was talking about Molly, and he was sending ESPN a message loud and clear. And the timing? Too perfect to ignore. Just as reports dropped that Molly had been offered a $2 million a year deal from ESPN's rival network, Stephen A. went on air preaching about how people can't demand money unless they bring leverage. That wasn't coincidence. That was a warning shot. And if anyone at ESPN could challenge the bosses, it's Stephen A. He's their golden goose, their ratings machine. When he speaks, they have to listen. But instead of protecting Molly, he might have made things worse. When he told millions that she had abruptly resigned, he blew the lid off the whole situation. Molly had tried to keep things quiet, but that one comment lit up the internet. Fans and analysts started connecting dots, asking why she'd walk out immediately if it was just about contracts. Why not finish the season? Why no farewell show? Something wasn't adding up, and everyone could feel it.
We don't get to define our own value. We don't get to define our own worth. We don't get to sit there and summarily say, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to do. And guess what? I don't give a damn what anybody say unless you have the leverage to do it.
Inside, sources say ESPN lowballed her hard, refusing to match what she knew she was worth. Meanwhile, Stephen A., the man who once bragged about fighting for colleagues in negotiations, started changing his tune. He said, "We all answer to somebody," which made people wonder whose side he was really on. Was he backing Molly or protecting his own empire? And that's where things get messy. Insiders whisper that there was real tension between Molly and Stephen A. over contracts, leverage, and who truly ran the show. When ESPN allegedly slid her what one insider called a disrespectful offer, especially compared to talents like Malika Andrews or Mina Kimes, the situation exploded. One commentator nailed it. That's the elephant in the room. Stephen A.'s $20 million paycheck sets the tone. If he's eating like that, of course others want more, but ESPN doesn't want to pay them. That imbalance created resentment, and for Molly, it might have been the breaking point. Stephen A. later claimed it was her story to tell, trying to sound respectful. But let's keep it real. The pattern's right there. Just weeks earlier, he proudly talked about helping Shannon Sharpe secure his ESPN deal, publicly backing other stars. So why didn't he go to bat for Molly the same way? Was it because the execs shut him down? Or because risking his own leverage wasn't worth it? That's what makes this story explosive. For once, the king of sports media found himself trapped between loyalty to a co-host he worked with for years and the billion-dollar machine that made him rich. In the end, Molly walked out, and Stephen A. walked a tightrope that exposed just how fragile ESPN's power balance really is. Stephen A. Smith might still be sitting pretty at ESPN, but that doesn't mean he walked away clean. The boss is still the king of the castle, but here's the plot twist most people missed. When Stephen A. went on air and turned Molly Qerim's exit into a lecture about contracts and leverage, he may have accidentally exposed himself. Think about it. When you say, "We all answer to somebody," and "you can't define your worth without leverage," you're not giving advice. You're confessing that you fought and lost. And that's exactly what ESPN doesn't want the public to know, because if Stephen A. Smith, their $20 million golden boy, couldn't get Molly the money she deserved, what does that say about how the network treats its own people? It screams that ESPN's higher-ups care more about their bottom line than the faces who built their empire. This story isn't just about one exit. It's about how loyalty gets crushed under corporate pressure. And when we peel back the layers, from Stephen A.'s cryptic comments to Molly's sudden offers from rival networks, the picture becomes painfully clear. Stephen A. confronted ESPN's top dogs, but when the smoke cleared, he walked away untouched while Molly was left out in the cold. Here's where it gets wild. The moment Molly walked out wasn't just a resignation. It was a chain reaction that shook sports media. Ironically, the one person who could have stopped it, Stephen A. Smith himself, became the lightning rod for all the backlash. For over a decade, Molly sat at the heart of First Take. She was the glue, keeping Stephen A.'s fire and Max Kellerman's debates from turning into chaos. She didn't just moderate, she gave the show its rhythm, its pace, its balance. But when her contract came up, ESPN treated her like she was disposable. No farewell show, no highlight reel, no thank you montage, just gone overnight. Her exit leaked before she even wanted it public. And what did Stephen A. do? He went on air and made it sound like her problem. That wasn't just commentary, that was a corporate defense speech. Fans noticed, and they weren't happy. They heard him loud and clear. Stephen A. wasn't defending Molly, he was defending ESPN. Now let's break this down. Stephen A. built his image on keeping it real, calling out athletes and execs with zero hesitation. But when it came to Molly, his energy shifted. He tiptoed, he dodged, he spoke in circles with lines like, "We all answer to somebody." Why the sudden caution? Because behind the scenes, he had already gone to war with the bosses and lost. Analysts claim Stephen A. tried to use his influence to bump up Molly's pay after ESPN lowballed her, but execs like Bob Iger and Jimmy Pitaro refused to budge. They'd already locked Stephen A. into a monster deal, so to them, Molly was secondary. She wasn't the ratings draw, she wasn't the headline name, she was the moderator, and in corporate talk that means expendable. So Stephen A. had a choice: fight harder and risk his own power, or play along and protect his throne. And from what we saw on TV, he chose the latter. But here's the gut punch. Molly wasn't just a co-worker. By Stephen A.'s own words, she was his partner, his ally, his support system. If that's true, why didn't he put his $20 million influence on the line for her? Why not take a smaller piece of the pie to keep the team together? Fans called him out everywhere. Podcasts, YouTube, Twitter. One critic said it best: "Don't chase clicks at the cost of the person who helped build your empire." But Stephen A. didn't flinch. He doubled down, saying it was her story to tell, all while stirring the pot just enough to keep the drama alive. Classic Stephen A. Protect the brand, feed the headlines, and stay untouchable. And here's what really hurt. Molly's issue wasn't just the paycheck, it was the disrespect. Insiders say her contract talks were humiliating. ESPN offered her crumbs while others like Malika Andrews and Mina Kimes were cashing six-figure raises. Imagine how that felt. 10 years of loyalty, showing up every day, holding down the show through chaos, and still being treated like a side note. She was there when Max Kellerman came and went. She steadied the ship through ESPN's shakeups and rebrands, yet when it was her turn, the network acted like she was replaceable. That's not just bad business, that's a slap in the face, and the minute word got out, the sharks started circling. Rival networks like Fox and Amazon came knocking with multi-year, multi-million-dollar offers. There were even whispers that Netflix wanted her for their sports expansion. Everybody saw Molly's worth, except the company she gave nearly 20 years to. That's why she didn't just walk, she sprinted. Staying would have meant swallowing disrespect, accepting less pay, and playing second fiddle to a co-host earning 10 times her salary. As for Stephen A., Insiders say he did push for her, but only so far. He made calls, reminded execs of her value, even hinted that letting her go would look bad. But when they refused, he folded. That's the difference between him and someone like Charles Barkley, who once took a pay cut to keep his inside the NBA crew together. Barkley gets it. Chemistry is the product. Stephen A., on the other hand, wasn't about to risk even a dime. So when he said, "We all answer to somebody," what he really meant was, "I tried, but the bosses said no, and I wasn't giving up my $20 million for her." Molly Qerim didn't want the story out yet. She posted that she was disappointed the news broke early. But who told millions of viewers she had resigned? Stephen A. Smith himself. Intentional or not, he became the face of her exit. And here's the bitter twist. The same man who preaches loyalty and brags about fighting for his people is now accused of letting one of his closest allies down. Was Stephen A. just protecting his own bag, or was ESPN so ruthless that even he couldn't save her? That's the debate lighting up the internet. Because this isn't just a Molly versus ESPN drama. It's a brutal case study on how corporate giants chew up their own talent when the numbers don't fit the spreadsheet. And the fact that Stephen A., the loudest man in sports, suddenly went silent when it mattered most. That's why fans are calling this one of the biggest betrayals in ESPN history. But here's the catch. This story isn't finished. The most shocking part of the standoff between Stephen A. and ESPN's top execs hasn't even dropped yet. And once it does, people might finally understand why Molly's walkout could mark the beginning of the end for ESPN's empire. Let's rewind. When Molly's contract dispute exploded into a resignation bombshell, Stephen A. found himself trapped between loyalty and self-preservation. Fight for Molly and risk his $20 million deal? Or play corporate soldier and live to talk another day? He tried to do both, and it blew up spectacularly. Right after Molly left, ESPN thought they could quietly clean it up. They figured she'd walk away, Stephen A. would move on, and the headlines would fade. But that's not what happened. Stephen A. couldn't stop himself. He went on air preaching about contracts, leverage, and answering to bosses. That wasn't just commentary, that was code. He was telling fans, "I fought for her, but I don't sign the checks." But instead of sympathy, the internet turned on him fast. Viewers didn't see a man defending his co-host. They saw a man throwing her under the bus. YouTube clips of his comments went viral, with analysts calling them tone-deaf and self-serving. Some even said he was trying to rewrite the story, making it sound like Molly was ungrateful instead of underpaid. Then came the leaks, and they made ESPN look terrible. Reports confirmed that ESPN had lowballed Molly hard, while rivals like Fox and Amazon were dangling multi-million-dollar contracts. One outlet said she was in talks for a $2 million a year deal, nearly double what ESPN had offered. So, when Stephen A. said on air, "We don't get to define our own value," fans saw it as proof. ESPN shortchanged Molly, and Stephen A. played defense for the bosses. But behind the scenes, things were messier. Insiders revealed that Stephen A. did go to bat for Molly. He reportedly argued her case, reminding executives of her decade-long loyalty and her role in building First Take into a powerhouse. But ESPN didn't budge. To them, moderators were interchangeable parts, and they proved it by already lining up replacements. That left Stephen A. in a corner. Push harder and he risks ticking off the same bosses who control his $20 million deal. Stay quiet and he looks like a hypocrite. His solution? Walk the tightrope. Publicly praise Molly, privately push management, but never go far enough to lose his own leverage. The result? Everybody lost. Molly felt betrayed. Fans accused Stephen A. of selling out, and ESPN execs were angry that he even mentioned contracts on air. It got so bad that Stephen A. had to go into damage control, releasing statements about his love and appreciation for Molly while dodging any responsibility. But that didn't fix the optics. It made them worse. Because how can you say she's irreplaceable 1 minute, and then let her walk out the door the next? Fans caught the contradiction instantly. On Reddit, Twitter, and sports podcasts, the narrative flipped fast. Stephen A. wasn't the hero, he was the villain. One commentator said it perfectly. If you really wanted her there, you'd have taken a pay cut. Tell the bosses, take $1 million from me and give it to Molly. That comparison stung, because everyone knows Charles Barkley and the inside the NBA crew have sacrificed pay to keep their chemistry alive. Meanwhile, Stephen A. looked like he was guarding his bag at all costs. And then came the wildest rumor of all, that Molly didn't just leave because of ESPN's disrespect, but maybe because of Stephen A. himself. Several outlets floated the idea that the friction between them wasn't just business. One even asked directly, did Molly Qerim leave ESPN to get away from Stephen A. Smith? There's no hard proof, but the timing raised eyebrows everywhere. Just days before Molly's exit, Stephen A. had bragged about helping Shannon Sharpe land his ESPN deal, going out of his way to vouch for him publicly. Yet he never showed that same energy for Molly, someone he'd worked beside for years. That silence spoke volumes. Now, Stephen A. faces a kind of pressure he's never felt before. He's always been the loudest voice in sports, the guy who calls out everyone else. But this time, he's the one being called out. The mask slipped, and fans are asking the question he can't dodge. Is Stephen A. really loyal, or is he just another corporate player protecting his contract? And then came Molly's revenge move, the rebound that made ESPN look even worse. Within days of her resignation, rival networks came running. Fox, Amazon Prime, even whispers of Netflix's sports division. Everyone wanted her. Why? Because while ESPN treated her like she was replaceable, the rest of the industry saw her as a star with proven chemistry, credibility, and a loyal fan base. Reports say she was being offered close to $2 million per year, almost double what ESPN allegedly offered during those disrespectful talks. That painted ESPN as the bad guy, a sinking ship losing its biggest voices not from disloyalty, but from cheap management. And now Stephen A. Smith, the man who always controlled the narrative, finds himself cornered in one he can't spin. So the real question is this: if he couldn't protect Molly, can he even protect himself? And when ESPN's empire finally starts to crack, will Stephen A. be the last man standing or the next one pushed out the door?